The teaching method that I chose was guided discovery. Guided discovery at the elementary, middle school, and high school level is different in many ways. Um, for starters, at the elementary level, the main emphasis should be the skill cues when it comes to skills, because you want the students to be able to perform the skills correctly. First off, because at the elementary level, it's really the foundation for their psychomotor skills going forward. So you want to build that good foundation, and you want them doing the skills correctly. So you really emphasize the skill cues. By doing this, you'll allow them to see the movement that best is the best practice and best way to succeed to do certain skills. Um, for example, a basketball lesson, at the elementary level, you could have a skill as simple as passing. And say, for example, I had hula hoop set up and we were going over passing. That was a skill that we were practicing. You could just give the students a foundation to the game, such as, you have to pass the ball from teammate to teammate and get the ball in this hula hoop to score a point. But you don't really give them any rules or regulations on the game. You kind of let them discover, what best suits the game from their experience. And, they kind of discover, things on their own. First off, you need the teams to be as small as possible. That's a key thing that you want to think about, because if you have 2 versus 2, there's a lot of reps, a lot of touches on the ball. And teams will discover the best rules and practice for the game moving forward to practice the passing skill. So you're letting them discover things on their own while re-emphasizing the skill cues constantly and giving positive specific feedback. At the elementary level, one way to assess, I think, is really, you could use things like a check sheet or have mini quizzes on the skills themselves. But I think really self-assessment is a big thing that needs to be used at the elementary level with guided discovery. For example, just having a simple check sheet and students, how do you feel about the skill being performed today? Excuse me. You could have them draw a smiley face or a frowny face or things just simple as that to give you feedback on how they felt about the lesson and how they feel about the way they perform the skills themselves, because how they feel about themselves ultimately is probably their confidence level too. So it gives you an idea on things you need to work on. At the middle school level, guide discovery is much different, because at this age the students should be exploring new skills and different tactics. So I think of the game of basketball being played. So I think at the middle school level, the main emphasis should definitely be tactical based guided discovery. For example, like if I had a drill set up or a game where the offensive team was attacking a zone defense and the defense played zone all the time, offense would have to find new ways to score the basketball and things of that nature that really help the kids work on all the skills, but at the same time have success and allow them to score and things like that. And, I think you're going to play modified games throughout your physical education course, and you can have a running team score. I think would be really big at the middle school level. Having a running team score, you're allowing people to score points off of hustle points, good sportsmanship, things of that nature. And, and by doing that, you're kind of building a chemistry within your class, because now everybody's at that age where they're maturing and bodies are filling out, and physical education is really competitive most of the time, so they want to play. And, but by advancing the skills in middle school, especially basketball, finishing with the left-handed layup for a right-handed player, dribbling with their non-dominant hand, and finding different ways, cross over between the leg dribble, behind the back dribble, different ways to have success is really what should be emphasized at the middle school age, so that the kids can have success later on in high school and be really comfortable with different tactics and strategies. As far as assessment goes at the middle school level, I think the sport ed model would be a really good way to assess. You could set up mini quizzes and have the students assess their peers within their teams. You could have an athletic trainer, help them warm up and things of that nature. And different people have different roles throughout the course of a unit. And that would allow the students to assess each other. And, you could still have the check sheet and things of that nature for self-assessment, but they're at the age where they can better assess other people, based on a rubric that you've given them or provided them. So, for example, like if I had teams of 3 or 4, and they were shooting, and then little Johnny had a rubric, and he's sitting here assessing, Tommy, and he's writing down, does he use the beef method, follow through, elbow, eyes, and balance, and all that good stuff, and he's assessing, the other student, and they're assessing their peers, and usually they'll take that a lot more into consideration than just me verbally assessing them and giving them feedback constantly. And so at the high school level, with guided discovery, there's going to be very few skill cues probably involved. If the students need to revisit the skill cues, that's fine. If I need to revisit it with them and go over things to break it down to simplest form, that's fine. But odds are by then, they have a good grasp on the skills at hand to perform the games and to play the games. So, the sport ed model could be really used to its fullest potential with the running score, tournament play, preseason, postseason. There's a head coach, athletic trainer, equipment manager, things of that nature. And then you could even have a statistician, that keeps the running stats and things like that. And but as far as assessment, it would be more rules and regulation based of the game, and rather than just asking questions about how they felt about performing it. But they could also, the rules would be like more in depth and more how to play the game correctly. Go by the rule book and things of that nature. And they can still practice the skills in modified games, and we could have different ways to score at the high school level. But they're still discovering the new moves and the advancing moves, and they're getting better at what they're doing. But basketball, especially, is a big sport. It's real so fundamentally. If you're good at the fundamentals, you can really succeed at all the rest. So, but at the high school level, they should be learning very advanced moves. So we may be setting up a practice or a drill in PE where they work on hedging an on-ball screen and things that you couldn't work at the elementary or middle school level, just because the kids are so more advanced and the game is more cognitively, they're more cognitively aware of what's going on now and how to use their athleticism and their skills to help compete in the games. As far as guide discovery, I think there's things that a teacher should always, really consider when using guide discovery. And, the considerations are all different at the elementary, middle, and high school level. A big thing at the elementary level is, what is your students' cognitive abilities? How well can they, assess the material that you're asking them, on the feedback? Or do they understand the feedback? Is it very, very specific? Everything needs to be broken down into the simplest form. And also at the elementary level, we really need to have a lot of visual aids. The visual aids will only help promote what we're trying to do, which is engage in physical activity, but it will help the students see the skills that they're really, really being asked to do, and they can really focus in and have that visual aid to help them. And, make sure that the students understand the skill cue assessments 100% without a doubt. They can demonstrate it, tell you it, everything, verbal, no problem. One thing to consider at the middle school level, are the students being pushed and exposed to new skills that is keeping them engaged in the activity? Because, if we go out and we just work on our layups in basketball all day, the students are really going to get bored and tired of that when they do it thousands and thousands of times. So we have to expose them to extensions to make the skills more, difficult for them to do. Because when you push them and you want them to do things that they don't even know if they can do it, and they become good at it, and they start seeing that success, they're more likely to, perform these skills and practices later on in life. And the kids that, aren't the super athletes, the you know, play all the sports, well known, that don't want to really play the sports, those are the kids that we have to reach, and we have to get those kids to understand that they can have success too. So setting up ways for every student to have success at the middle school level is critical. So that is one question that I will always ask myself when teaching at the middle school level is, are these kids being pushed at the right limit, and are they progressing at the right pace and timing for their well-being? And then at the high school level, the big emphasis on the teacher considerations when exposing to guided discovery is the psychomotor and cognitive performances should be assessed, both cognitive and psychomotor. The performance of the skill cues, as well as the assessment and knowledge of the skill cues and skills at hand, should be both assessed at the high school level. Students, they should always be given positive, specific feedback when needed. And the skill cues can be revisited if needed at the high school level, but the consideration is you have to assess the psychomotor and cognitive so that the students fully grasp the material at hand, and you know that they do. And one big thing that I think for all three levels, the elementary, the middle school, and the high school level, that a teacher needs to consider, the guided discovery technique is made to reduce managerial time and increase instructional time, just like every other teaching model there is and teaching method. So always, always, always have enough task sheets printed out. Be prepared for every class, every lesson, and make sure that there's enough prompts and things of that nature that you can use within your class, that's not setting you back time-wise. And as always, the teacher brings the energy to the class. If you're teaching a rhythmical lesson at the elementary level, middle school, or high school, you are going to set the tone for the class. The students feed off of you, so always, always, always be sure to bring the energy as the instructor. And, always understand the different levels of assessment needed depending on the age of your students. So that's video number 2.